I'm so happy to be with you tonight, and so happy to be having a conversation with Azar Nafisi. I have just spent the last few days curled up with reading Lolita in Tehran. And I really, when I was reading this book, I just got the sense that your writing just feels like sunlight to me. Like it just felt like it was illuminating and warm, and it's a sort of accompaniment that just keeps opening, opens and opens and opens. So I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I wanted to start by asking you, since you've written so well and so beautifully about what books can do in our lives and what reading means in our lives, I wanted to ask maybe about the first experience that you had with a book that made you fall in love with reading.
Thank you so much, and I want to thank the Arion Press and especially Ted. I want to tell you that they took me for a tour of Arion Press, and all last night I tried to sleep and dream of those machines. I mean, they're...
I have to ask, in the dream, are you operating the machine?
Well, who knows? I mean, I certainly don't. But I honestly, I kept thinking these machines, they're so magical and they're so miraculous. We were talking about how they're far more complicated than what our techies in the neighborhood claim them to be. They're complex, and I can hear them. I can hear them speak. And each of them has its own special way of talking. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for you. And her wonderful, amazing book. I have been having a conversation with Ingrid for a while because of reading her book. And that is the wonderful, amazing thing about books. They connect you to people you should be connected to. People who share the same passion with you, not because you're working together or something that arises out of necessity. Necessity is sharing your passion with those who have the same passion. So I always think that books are like your children. You go through so much trouble, and then the labor pain, and you could tell me if I'm wrong. Labor pain is serious in writing. It's at the heart of writing. You have to go through that pain. And finally, the child comes into the world, and soon enough, they will go away and come back to you. And you don't know what amazing places they take you to, and what amazing people you talk to. So I'm so happy to be here and to be connected to you guys. You asked about what book made me jump down the hall. I'm very promiscuous when it comes to books.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very difficult for me to decide which one. Each of them I have many lovers among books, and I'm not at all ashamed of it. But what I can say about experience of how these books affected me, my personal experience. When I was about 3.5, my father each night would read me stories or tell me stories. And he was very democratic in the way he told his stories. One night we would go to Ferdowsi, the great Persian epic poet, and live with the heroes and heroines of Iranian mythology and Iranian history. The next night we will go to France with Little Prince, the next night with Alice, to England with the Little Match Girl, to in Denmark, Pinocchio, of course, Italy, Charlotte's Web, US, you name it, he would tell me stories. But he would also create for the two of us a space which was a very sacred space in which we played stories. Like when he was mad at me, he wouldn't tell me that I'm mad at you. He would say there was this guy who had this little daughter whom he loved very much. And then he would then bring up the question of why he is unhappy. He also taught me when I'm depressed or when I want something and I can't have it, I should put it in a story and I will have it. I was telling Ingrid, my mother gave the flowers I had this vase of flowers in my room when I was about 5 years old or so. And my mother gave it to the neighbor, the flowers. And I made a scene to end all scenes. And my father told me, why don't you make a story about this girl whose flowers were gone? And she looked after the flower, finding the flowers. And anyway, that is how he did it with me. So I learned from my father that I can stay in my little room in Tehran and the whole world will come to me. Mm-hmm. Before I had been to any of these countries, which I later went to, I had been there through their works of imagination. When I was 13, my parents sent me to England to further my education, as they would say. If you were in the airport on the day I left, you would find that I was the 13-year-old brat running around the airport saying, I don't want to go. Mm. That was my first experience of what later became exile. The fact that I realized that through not just a war and a revolution, which I went through, but just through ordinary living, home is not going to be always your home.
Right.
Everything that you have can be taken away from you at the drop of an eye. Life is fickle, and it has not guaranteed to you that it will give you whatever you want. So all of a sudden, I realized I need a portable world. I need a world that I can take with me everywhere I go, and no one has the power to take it away from me. So I took 3 books with me, one by Maulana Rumi, people know Rumi here, and Hafiz are 2 classic poets, and a feminist Iranian poet whom we very much love in Iran, and she died very young, and this regime, of course, tried to eliminate her name from Iranian culture. But anyway, I took them with me to England, and at night I would go under. I don't know. Most of you are not old enough to have been in England when they had these machines where you put shillings in for the heat. I had one of these machines in my room, and I would go under the duvet and hold the hot water bottle and read the poems. And at that time, there was a book published in England called How to Be an Alien. And I remember one sentence from that book. It said, continental people have sex life, the British have the hot water bottle. So anyway, to make a long story short, I learned to make my home in England and later in US through its writers, through Henry Fielding and Smollett and Jane Austen and Emily Bronte and Auden, and then later on Mark Twain and Zora Neale Hurston and Ralph Ellison and wow, somebody doesn't like me talking. I'm sorry. Actually, I am talking a lot. I will. So I made my home in England and in America through the books. And when I went back to Iran and found that home is not home anymore, I went back to connecting to the books and to connecting to the world through the books.
Yeah, when my family left Colombia in the 90s, and it was a very dangerous time. And I remember too that the feeling of packing a book and it being like the only thing that you could bring with you. And for me, I brought Frida Kahlo's Diaries was one of the things that I brought. Oh. And the other one was Pablo Neruda's 100 Love Poems and a Song of Despair. And it was just like, books that I didn't even have to think about it. I think I shared one suitcase with my sister, so I had this much space. And it became like a very sentimental decision about what you save. And also for me, being elsewhere and losing my connection to home was the first time that I understood that writing is the place where you put things to safeguard them.
Yeah.
And so when we read books, we're encountering things that others have safeguarded, that they've thought are important. One of the things that we're here to discuss tonight is the rise of book banning in the U.S. I found out that the most banned books this past year were The Bluest Eye and The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
And Azar, I'm curious about whether you see parallels from what it meant to be a voracious reader living in the Islamic Republic of Iran and teaching, and maybe what you see happening now in the U.S.
Yeah. By the way, those two books you mentioned, I talk about both of them in Read Dangerously. It's one chapter of my book. Censorship and banning books, yes, I do see a lot of parallels. And, this is about a totalitarian mindset. So it can exist anywhere, including in democracies. In Iran, after the revolution, the chief censor for theater was blind. Later, they gave him the job of being the head censor at a television channel. What he would do, he would sit and somebody would sit beside him and say, now the girl is approaching the boy, now and then he would say, cut. And he told the playwrights to tape their play, but no dramatization, just read it. And he would listen to it. The next person who replaced him was not blind, but for all practical purposes he was, because he continued with that thing. So that blind censor became a metaphor for all censorship. The whole idea of censorship is that they don't see you. They mutilate the book, that saying, first they burn books, then they kill people. This is a warning that it's not going to stop here, although it's gone far enough, but not far enough for them. And the question that I have is, what is it about these men and women whose only weapon is their words?
Right.
I mean, look at Salman Rushdie. What does this guy have? What is so frightening about him? That one of the most powerful men on earth, Ayatollah Khomeini, with all his army and militia and bombs and nuclear weapon, this guy cannot abide this man of words to live. What is it that makes them so scared? And the same thing is here. They can't abide it. I mean, writers become dangerous entities, and you have to somehow eliminate them. It's not a matter of having an exchange with them. It is about eliminating them. And what is the reason behind it? You mentioned in your book, people don't want to hear truth, they want to hear stories. And that is how truth is given to us. Because literature, imagination, great books are about the truth. And totalitarian mindset is based on lies, on fabrications. I mean, look at the news in the United States. Look at what, I don't even need to name names. Do I need to? No. So they're afraid, and they want to mutilate your book and to destroy you. And so what does Salman Rushdie do? He writes. That is how he responds to them, by writing. And that's the difference between a tyrant and a writer.
Yeah. And I think that there's a big parallel just with the way that book banning has been happening is that it's led by a minority of parents, and in most cases the parents haven't even read the book. They just hear a few things that are alarming for them to hear, and then they just decide this needs to be banned. But I think that there's reading your book now, like reading Lolita and Tehran, I felt that it was so important to read that part where you put the Great Gatsby on trial, which is one of my favorite parts in the book. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? And I think especially because of the way that different students reacted, and some were saying, The Great Gatsby is a book that nobody should read because it's amoral. And then other students were arguing for the art of it. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Yes, The Great Gatsby. Once this guy who's very powerful in the Islamic Student Association came to me and said, The Great Gatsby, it's a terrible book. I mean, it's American to begin with, but it teaches adultery. Well, you could tell them if Gatsby is about adultery, then Hemingway's Old Man and the Sea is about fishing.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, what the hell? It really got on my nerves when he said that.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be rude to him, so I suggested that we have a trial of Gatsby. We put him on trial, and he'll be the prosecutor. So he reluctantly became the prosecutor and gave a pompous lecture to us, which was terrible, about how God is against Gatsby. and things like that. A wonderful student of mine. She was really great, and she became the defense lawyer, and I became the book. And in the end, the students voted to keep Gatsby, and they said that it's a beautiful book. And I reminded them that a great book transcends not only the prejudices of its time, it transcends sometimes the flaws of its author. Mm-hmm. That Fitzgerald was in love with wealth, and yet he writes one of the most beautiful books in condemning American materialism. Yeah. Condemning the rich. The rich are such amazing villains in Gatsby. And that is what a great novel does. It looks into the mirror and doesn't like what it sees.
Yeah, I just want to read, I just love this quote of, something that you told the students during this class. You don't read Gatsby to learn whether adultery is good or bad, but to learn about how complicated issues as adultery, infidelity, and marriage are. A great novel heightens your senses and sensitivity to the complexities of life and of individuals, and prevents you from the self-righteousness that sees morality in fixed formulas about good and evil.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the whole idea. And what Great Gatsby does, it doesn't come out and condemn wealth. It puts you within that experience. Mm. So by the end of the novel, you're really disgusted with Daisy and Tom, and sympathetic to Gatsby.
Yeah. And your students were very much changed by, the literature that you taught them. And reading the book, we encounter, students who are in the classroom, and then years later, you meet with them. And I was very touched by the story of Mateb and
Raziel.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing her up.
Yeah.
Raziel, I was talking about it. I have written about her in Reading Lolita, but again wrote about her in Read Dangerously. And wherever I go, I talk about her because I want to keep her alive. And by the way, you have this beautiful sentence in your book where you talk about how forgetting is a way of dying, and remembering is a way of resurrection. Every moment we die. And what literature does, it becomes guardian of memory. It becomes witness to conclusive evidence that we have lived. And the only way I can keep Raziel alive is by talking about her. I was teaching a course on American fiction, and Henry James was one of the writers, Washington Square and Daisy Miller. I was teaching them. And Raziel was in that class, and I can see her every time I talk about her. She was very thin, and she had huge eyes, short, thin, and huge eyes, like a bird. Only birds don't have huge eyes, usually. She was Muslim. Her mother was a cleaning lady, and her father was dead. And one day, Nazia came to me and told me how much she loves the heroines of James's novels. She said they're so independent, and one of them even gives her life. She was talking about Daisy Miller. And so we got into a habit of Raziel at the end of the class coming to me and talking to me and telling me how when she was a young kid, she used to borrow from the houses of where her mother cleaned. She would borrow the books and sometimes steal the books. Anyway, to make this story short, she once told me very shyly and with a big smile, I think I'm falling in love. And he meant with James. James would have been happy to know that Razia loved him. And so I left that university at the end of the term, and I didn't see her. I saw her once in the street, and at that time was at the height of regimes arresting people and killing them. And we used to not show that we know one another. I mean, she made a sign that told me that I shouldn't make her. Anyway, a few years later, one of my students came to see me at the university. And she said she had been in jail during the Cultural Revolution. And she was in a cell with Razieh. They both were in the same cell. And she said, you know, we had so much fun. I talked about Gatsby, and she talked about Henry James. And these wardens didn't know what we were talking about, you know. And I imagine that horrible, terrible jail. And here are Razieh and Mahtab laughing at the warden, you know. And then one day after a pause, wow. Anyway, I better finish soon. She told me, you know, she was executed. And I didn't know. I didn't know. And I have been asking myself this question, what did James give Razieh? He couldn't save her from death, but he could make her life till the end a life of dignity and integrity. You know, when even when we are at death's door, like Razieh, we have a choice. How we die matters. And so anyway, I made, this is the best example of literature, what literature does. A man living thousands of miles away from this young girl, and they connect. And whoever says we shouldn't read other people's literature, we should only read ours, literature is about other. It is about those you don't know, and you put yourself in their place through literature. You get to know them. So this was Razieh's story.
It sort of reminds me of, I was very affected reading this part of the book where there were bombings happening in Tehran.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the ways that you passed the time as that was happening is that you found refuge in books as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's also very similar to that. And you also mentioned like one of, in Henry James's letters, he writes about how feeling was one of the most important resources to counter the senselessness of war. And I wonder if those, you know, like the reason why literature is a refuge is because it's like the last refuge of feeling that it is portable and that we carry, you know, with us.
Yeah, literature works with the heart. I mean, the mind is there as well, but without the heart, there is no literature. There is no work of imagination. And this is the times we live in are the times where we put aside the feeling because we dehumanize others. Mm-hmm. You know, and that dehumanization, even your enemy. Actually, I wrote about it in Read Dangerously. There's a chapter on the Palestinian and Israeli writers. And I talk about that one of the things that David Grossman, the Israeli writer, says is that you cannot dehumanize the enemy. You have to accept them as human beings. You know, and you cannot become like your enemy. You have to fight them through not being them.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes it is very difficult. I remember every time they killed someone close to me or did all the horrible things that they do, I would say, God, I just want to kill these guys. You know, I don't want these bastards to live another moment, you know. But then I would lose myself if I become them, if I act that way. You have to channel that anger in a way that would be constructive, the way the Iranian people have done.
And you were also talking about how one of the facets of the villains in literature had to do with a character being incurious about others, and having this mindset of reading them in one way, having no curiosity about it, and then sort of I guess like having that totalizing effect on another person.
Yeah, I think that we need literature because two of our basic human traits, curiosity and empathy, are at the heart of literature. Without it, you wouldn't have any literature. And I always bring the quotation from Nabokov, who says, curiosity is insubordination in its purest form. Because, it's like Alice, you don't know what you'll find when you jump that hole. And people are scared of books. We've been talking about censorship. Curiosity is always about the other. It is always about the other. And if you are curious enough, then it leads to empathy. Because you're able to put yourself in the place of those who are not you. And create the connection. Without that connection that empathy makes, we won't, as human beings, survive for one day. We need that. And our system of education today is such that it takes away that privilege from our young people. Knowledge by itself is subversive, because it questions all the formulas, because it is ready to change if it is wrong. So both science and literature are based on this respect for knowledge, and not reward of knowledge, but respect for knowledge, to want to know. And we're taking that away from them. We either become too corporate, or we become too ideological. Both of these are dangerous, because both of them are utilitarian. They want literature to be at their service. And once you become at someone else's service, you lose yourself. You're not yourself anymore. So I think curiosity is at the center of literature.
It is, really a very profound and beautiful idea that, one of the things that we can do in this time is actually to read, and to turn others to reading. Well, I want to thank you all, and let's give Azar Nafisi a round of applause. I also want to thank Arion Press. Thank you so much for having us here. Thank you.
May I just ask one thing? I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I wrote this and I wanted to read it. Shall
yes,
I?
Please
it's not
do.
mine.
Please do.
It's from Bertolt Brecht, the German poet and playwright. I just wanted to end on a sign of hope. In the dark times, would there also be singing? Yes. and there will also be singing about the dark times.